Hello and welcome to Cinema Therapy Reviews. I'm Jonathan Decker, licensed therapist who loves movies. This is
Alan Seawright, a professional filmmaker who needs therapy. We went and saw a movie, Jono.
We did. It was an anime, I wouldn't say prequel because it's not setting up characters we know and love. It's just a story in the universe of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings based on the works of J.R.R. Tolkien.
And I would say prequel because it does so much fan service and has a bunch of stuff that you didn't need, like orcs shopping for rings.
This movie was directed by Kenji Kamiyama, who gave us Akira, and it must be said, as an anime, I thought it was beautiful to watch on the big screen.
I have mixed feelings about the art style of the film. I thought that the art was spectacular. The character designs were, fun anime. Like it was interesting to be in very clearly Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings universe, but like with a completely different character style. I found that really interesting. I did have issues with some of the animation. Anime action for me kind of breaks down into two different camps. There's one that's like really emphasizes big strong poses and then action hits with a lot of pop. And then there's the kind where they're trying to do that and it just ends up really choppy and difficult to follow a lot of the time. And I felt like more of this film was the second one than the first one.
I felt like the animation, you could take almost any still frame for this movie and it would be beautiful. Yeah. I agree that sometimes it was choppy, and I had an issue with the faces didn't emote that well.
Correct.
And I would say it actually took me a while to notice it because, in fairness, the voice acting is really stellar. The delivery of the dialogue and just the emotion behind it, plus the sound design, plus the music, you could close your eyes. If you didn't know this was an animated film and you were just going in literally blind, you could listen to this and think it was a live action Lord of the Rings film. Like everything of that worked. But I just wish the faces matched the voices a bit more in terms of emotion.
Really quick overview of the film. This is a story takes place 200 years before the Lord of the Rings trilogy that we know and love with Frodo and Sam and the whole crew. It's the story of Helm Hammerhand and how Helm's Deep came to be named Helm's Deep, which, spoiler alert, involves a snowstorm.
I love the name Helm Hammerhand. Like, he is One Punch Man in the Lord of the Rings universe.
He really is. And he's this big giant beefcake, Brian Cox sounding dude that just punches dudes to death. Whoopsie. And it's a story of, a bunch of different tribesmen, I guess, in Rohan fighting each other and uniting. Except it's not about that at all. It's about Helm Hammerhand's daughter, Héra, who is mentioned in one sentence in one appendix of one of the Lord of the Rings books. And they were like, hey, we can make a movie out of that. Honestly, it's a big, sweeping adventure tale, and there's a lot of stuff going on, and there's beautiful vistas, and there's exciting fights, and when you can understand what's going on. Overall, it's a pretty decent little movie.
Well, and there's a fight involving two giant Middle-earth creatures that was basically like Middle-earth kaiju, and I loved it.
Holy crap, it was spectacular. Yeah. I don't know that any of the scale worked. There were a lot of scale issues in this movie where, like, sometimes people were this size and sometimes they were this size, and but it kind of didn't matter.
Here's what worked for me. Honestly, the story. I agree that there were fan servicey moments, but I also feel like those mostly came at the end as they tied everything like together and then pushed it more towards 200 years in the future. This is what we're looking towards now. Listen, there's a lot of things on the surface of this where it's okay, New Line didn't want to lose the rights, and so they rush jobbed this movie, and they hired an exceptional director to do a rush job so that it didn't utterly suck. And they cherry-picked this one female character from one line of an appendix and blossomed her into the protagonist of the feature-length film. And I gotta tell you, for me, it worked. I love the whole notion of one small instance of pride and ego snowballs into this horrifying war, because that's how wars often happen in real life. I also found myself emotionally drawn to her story and really digging the fact that she is a strong female protagonist who also is very human, makes a lot of mistakes. She's not, quote unquote, a Mary Sue, even though I hate that term. But she's not just kind of born into greatness, even though she's got these talents and skills. Anytime she's in combat, for example, she gets her ass handed to her several times because she's not as physically powerful as these giant men she's fighting. So she has to get smart, and she has to get scrappy, and she has to get in their heads, and she has to be a better fighter because she's not more powerful. There were several times where when they're at what is going to be the future Helm's Deep, where I really felt the despair and I really felt cold, even though my movie theater was warm and I had a blanket on me. I felt personally drawn into the story. Sounds like you, and to Héra, sounds like you didn't.
My issue, honestly, my biggest issue with the whole film is Héra was such a non-entity for me. I never connected with her at all.
Oh, really?
Like,
Okay.
all of the points you made are true, but what did she want throughout the whole movie? We get sort of a vague idea that she doesn't want to marry. She kind of just wants to be a wild adventure lady.
Yeah.
And that's kind of it. And then the story just sweeps her along and she's just kind of reacting to things.
That's fair.
She didn't want or choose anything.
I think she chose to defend her people. And that's you're right.
Sure.
Like, that's like
But
her
what
one
choice do you
character
have
trait.
there? It's like
You can run and
either
hide and
choose to
cower.
defend your people or you can choose to be not in the movie. You know?
I may have some bias here because I'm a father who took his daughter to see this and she was super into it. And you know how that rubs off. And I'm not apologizing for enjoying the movie, but I am seeing the point you're
you
making.
shouldn't.
And I guess something that I really enjoyed about this is that it didn't try, like the Hobbit trilogy tried, to match Lord of the Rings in scale. It's content to be an interesting story in Middle-earth, and that's all it needs to be. And I actually really appreciated that. So Alan, who's this movie for?
This movie is for a sort of wide range of a narrow range of people. Let me explain. I think there was a flaw in the marketing of this film, which is, I don't know if you've seen any of the trailers or any of the advertising, but it's all, come back to Peter Jackson's Middle-earth. And it's like, don't draw that comparison. Because Peter Jackson's Middle-earth is these big giant epics that should feel like an event. And this movie didn't feel like an event. It felt like a capital E event that, you know, with spotlights and fireworks. It felt like an event like Thursday, you know? Like, it was a great Thursday as far as a Thursday goes.
I would say you could totally watch this at home and skip this in theaters, unless you're an anime enthusiast who likes to see these images on the big screen, which I am. I did. And I also think you get a different experience with the sound design unless you've got surround at home. So
people who are going to see this movie, I would encourage you to see it in theaters because movies just hit different in theaters. If you're not a big fan of either this type of anime or a huge fan of Lord of the Rings and you just gobble up everything that comes out, this is one that you can wait on. And, you know, it's a fun Thursday watch.
I will say if you like Lord of the Rings but aren't super keen on anime, you'll probably forget that you're watching an anime and get sucked into the story. At least that was my
Aside from the dull, lifeless faces. Other than that, you'll be fine. Okay, so Jono, what are the lessons you can take from this film? Which, honestly, I thought thematically was pretty strong. So I'm curious to see what you got.
Yeah, so how does unchecked pride lead to disaster? How does Héra adapt to defend herself and her people? And how can you protect yourself from manipulative narcissists?
I would like to know that. I work in the film industry.
I was gonna say, you're the director. Odds are it's you.
How do I protect myself from myself?
That's a thinker.
All right, Alan, it's time to give this movie a grade. How would you rate Lord of the Rings: War of the Rohirrim?
Probably came across. I didn't super care for this movie. That being said, I'm not as down on it as it might have sounded like from a lot of the, because you were so up on it, I had to be the counterpoint guy, right?
Sure, for sure.
So I'm gonna give it a 5. Look, it's a solid movie. There's a lot worse ways you could spend 2 hours and 10 minutes.
Yeah. And my out of the theater was an 8. I was riding high. I guess I'm being back in Middle Earth. Now, morning after and thinking of some of the things you're saying, I'm going to give it a solid 7, which puts us at a 6.
It's not bad, especially given all of the, like, if once you understand the political stuff of why this movie got made and how quickly it got made and all of that, this movie is a miracle. It should be a complete turd.
Yeah.
And it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. All right, so if you've seen it, what did you all think of Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim? And, as always, remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and
Watch movies
in
at
the theater.